It's been 3 months since an e-bike first landed in my fleet. It was a demo sent to me from Niner. And over the past 3 months, I've been putting together a list of pros and cons of owning an e-bike. Now, e-bikes I found are very polarizing, so I'm going to keep this list as unbiased as possible. Now, I'm sure a few of the points that I make will be my opinion, but for the most part, I'm going to try to be unbiased. Now, this by no means will be an exhaustive list. I'm sure there's other pros and cons out there, but these are the ones that I've come up with. Now, just so that people don't think I'm being biased by listing the pros first or the cons first, I'm going to flip a coin. So if it's heads, we're going to do the pros first, and if it's tails, we're going to do the cons first. Here we go. It is heads. Let's start with the pros. At the top of my pros list is it allows people of different fitness levels to ride together, whether it's husband and wife or someone who's brand new to mountain biking, riding with someone who's been riding for a long time. Personally, I took someone out last week. I let them ride the e-bike. They were brand new to mountain biking. We rode together for an hour and a half on our local trails and had a great ride together. And that would not have happened if this person were not on an e-bike. Number 2 on my pros list is it helps people with physical limitations get out and enjoy mountain biking. I've had so many people leave comments saying that they have an e-bike because they would not be able to ride mountain bikes like they do without an e-bike. So helping people who physically wouldn't be able to push hard and do longer rides on a mountain bike can get out there and ride and enjoy what it's like to be in nature on a bicycle. Also near the top of the pros list for me is it's something different. It makes your local trails completely different by being on an e-bike. The uphills, you'll ride a lot faster than you could on your traditional bike. And so that allows you to experience local trails. For me, I've said this before in some of my videos, I don't have a chance to ride like a massive number of trails near my house. I've got about 35 miles of trail and I can drive other places. But for me, it allows me to just experience my local trails in a different way. Another pro is when you're riding in the mountains, it allows you to get in more descending. Whether you're just wanting to get out and have fun without exerting yourself too hard to enjoy the downhills, or if you're practicing for enduro racing, again, it allows you to just get in a lot more descending miles than you would be able to on your traditional bike. And kind of along those same lines, you don't need to rely on a shuttle. I'll talk about environmental impacts coming up here near the end of the video, but that's one real positive advantage is you're not relying on a gas guzzling shuttle or even a ski lift to help you get up and enjoy the descents. You're still getting some fitness, more fitness than you would obviously get on a ski lift or a shuttle, but you're not relying on those to get up to the top of the mountain to enjoy descending. Another pro is it's actually a good training tool to learn how to ride fast if you live in a flatter terrain area like I do. So I actually had my lap times improve on my traditional bike after riding the e-bike. Now, I don't know if that's because maybe I was just riding mountain bikes more because I also ride gravel and maybe just my mountain biking mojo was a little bit more tuned, or if it just allowed me to practice cornering and going faster. But regardless, again, if you live in an area where you don't have a lot of long descents, you can practice going faster. Another pro is it allows you to get out and ride your mountain bike fast even on easy days. So recovery days, you can still go really fast and not get your heart rate up, again, if you have a planned easy day. Another pro is they're just fun. They're a lot of fun. Just like owning a motorcycle or a jet ski or another motorized vehicle, it's a fun recreational vehicle. Now, I know there's debates on whether e-bikes are motorcycles or not. I'll give my opinion. To me, a motorcycle definition is a two-wheeled vehicle with a motor. So I consider e-bikes motorcycles. Now, albeit they're a very slow motorcycle and you can ride them on a lot of mountain bike trails. But the point is, it's just a fun recreational tool that's different from your traditional bicycle. Another pro is it just is going to motivate more people to get outside and ride bicycles. I've had several people leave comments that they have lost a lot of weight, they've improved their fitness because having an e-bike just motivated them to get out and ride. And yes, you can get a workout, especially if you dial down the pedal assist. You can still get training, you can still get fitness. And there's a lot of people that would not probably get out on a traditional bike just because maybe they live in a hilly area and they're intimidated by the mountains, the climbs, but they still want to get out and ride. Having that little bit of pedal assist will get more people out riding. And the last pro is it's probably going to help more people commute. Now, this is more of an opinion. It's kind of speculation, but I think it's just going to get more people riding to work on a bicycle versus public transportation or driving their car. Now to the cons. Now these aren't really in much of an order. The pros, I kind of put the ones that I felt were the biggest ones near the top of the list, but the cons, this is just kind of shotgun as I come up with them. One con is you just got to make sure you charge your bike. If you get home and forget to charge your e-bike and you head out on another ride, then you're not going to be able to ride your e-bike unless you just didn't use much of the battery. The other thing kind of along those lines is when you travel, make sure you bring your charger. It's just one more thing you got to think about. But if you go on a trip without your charger, you're out of luck unless you just go buy another charger. Now, I mentioned in the pros that it gets more people out, especially gets new people out and enjoying the sport. On the flip side of that, it can honestly be maybe a little dangerous for new riders who ride irresponsibly. Now, obviously it's up to the rider, but if you put an e-bike in turbo mode and you're pedaling fast into a corner, if you don't have the skills to learn how to brake properly and corner properly, you can be going faster than your skills will allow. Now, the e-bike that I had, and I think most of them are like this, is it will keep going a split second after you stop pedaling. So you can come into a corner pretty hot. So again, for new riders, it comes down to their responsibility, but you don't want to ride faster than your skills will allow. Another negative about e-bikes is, for me, and now this is a little bit of a personal one, but I didn't get the feeling of accomplishment that I get on a traditional bike, especially climbing. Now, again, this is just me, but I love climbing on a bicycle. And when I get to the top of a mountain, just looking down where I came from, there's just this sense of accomplishment. When I climbed on an e-bike, I didn't have that. So that's just a negative for me. Another negative similar to the one that I just mentioned is, like me, if you are limited on your training time with a full-time job, a family, you want to get as many pedaling days, training days as you can. And having an e-bike, you know, when I got on the e-bike, I just wanted to go as fast as I could. So I put the thing in turbo. So, you know, that's just me, but you can be tempted to not have as many hard training days. But that one is a little more personal because, like I mentioned earlier, you can use a lower pedal assist and get a good workout. Now, again, along those same lines is if you ride often and you don't need an e-bike for physical reasons, you just do it for fun, it can be tempting to just ride the e-bike a lot and you can lose fitness. I had somebody post a comment saying that after 6 months of owning an e-bike, his FTP went down quite a bit. And so I think you just have to use some discipline, either to not run it on turbo all the time or just don't ride the e-bike every time you get out on a mountain bike. You know, mix it up. Ride your traditional bike, ride the e-bike so you can get your training and fitness, and then you can get your fun on the e-bike. Another negative for e-bikes, and personally this was a bigger negative for me on the e-bike, is you just can't flick it around as much. It's pretty heavy. Now, there are some pretty light e-bikes. They're really expensive, but the e-bikes, you know, because they're so heavy, the one I had was 55 pounds, you just can't flick it around the trail that much. And I found myself a lot of times preferring my trail bike, particularly my Transition Spur, just because it was more fun on my local trails that didn't have a lot of climbing. I could just flick it around. Now, I will say the e-bike was more maneuverable than I expected. It was better in the corners than I expected, but still it's just not quite as fun and flickable as a traditional bike. Another thing that's, I wouldn't really call it a negative, it's just something that you really need to consider. If you want to get out with groups and you're all fairly about the same fitness level, to really enjoy the e-bike the most, everybody needs to be on an e-bike. If not, you're going to get to the top of the climb and you're going to be waiting a long time for the people on the traditional bikes to catch up. So it's just a consideration when having an e-bike. Now I want to talk about kind of the logistics of owning an e-bike. And these are things that you really need to consider if you're thinking about buying an e-bike. First of all, you may have to purchase a new bike rack. Not every bike rack can hold an e-bike. Most of the ones that can are rated to at least 60 pounds. Some of the other bike racks are rated only up to 35 pounds. So you need to consider that. Also, even some of the bike racks that are rated to 60 pounds for the first two positions are not rated that high for the second two positions if you're looking at a 4-bike rack. Now, lifting the e-bike up on a rack is something that some people are going to struggle with. We're cyclists. We're not known for our massive upper body strength. And hoisting an e-bike up on a bike rack, if you have back problems or you're just physically not that strong, it can be somewhat challenging. Now, what you can do is you can either take the battery out before putting it on the rack, or you can lift the front wheel up first, kind of walk it over to the rack, put the front wheel on, and then lift the back tire up and roll it onto the rack. Also, a lot of bike rack companies now make a ramp. So you can put it out to the side of the bike rack, roll the e-bike up onto the trays, and then secure the bike on the bike rack. But the ramp is, something else that you've got to buy, and it's also another accessory that you may have to keep in your vehicle. Some of them I think will attach to the bike rack that you can swing out, but again, it's just a consideration of the weight of an e-bike, putting it on a bike rack. Similar to that is putting the e-bike in the work stand. I always took the battery out when I had to put the e-bike in my work stand. Now, I have a nice park stand and I have a cheap one that I use for cleaning my bikes. And the cheap one is kind of flimsy, and I never put the e-bike in that one. It's almost a little flimsy with my Enduro bike. So I know with the e-bike, it was just not going to work. So that's something that you got to consider. So if you're just used to hoisting your bike up into the stand to do some maintenance, it's a little difficult to lift that thing up and clamp it into the stand. And again, you probably are going to want to take your battery out before putting it in your work stand. Now, this negative is based on some feedback that I've gotten from other e-bike owners, and that is long-term maintenance. Batteries don't last forever. The motor is not going to last forever. So it's something that you're going to have to give attention to a few years down the road. So you got to consider that. Also, now this is more speculation based on my 25 or 30 years of mountain biking experience, but I would imagine drivetrain maintenance is going to be a little bit more involved with an e-bike. I would imagine you're going to be changing your chains out quicker. For example, on my cyclocross race bike, I would have to change my chain more often because I have more just hard efforts, short, hard burst of efforts versus my gravel bike where I don't put as many watts out on the gravel bike. With an e-bike, you can easily put out 400, 500 watts into the chain, and you're doing that a lot. So you're putting more stress on the drivetrain, the chain rings, the chain. So again, I think you're just going to have to consider that you're going to be changing parts on your drivetrain a little bit more often with an e-bike. Another maintenance issue, and this may sound minor, but I found it to be somewhat of a big deal, and that is when you spin the pedals backwards on an e-bike, the chain does not move. Almost every ride, I will lube my chain. Just put a little bit of lube on it, and I just hold the bottle over my chain. I spin the pedals backwards, get the chain all lubed up. Takes like 10 seconds. With an e-bike, you can't do that. So you've got a couple of options. Is one, you can put the bike in a stand and then spin the pedals forward and get the lube on the chain. Or you can take your fingers and move the cassette backwards as you drip. It is a lot more of a pain than it sounds. And sometimes the cassette's hard to move because the motor's kind of got some drag. So you can't just quickly lube your chain. Again, that may sound minor, but for someone like me who lubes his chain like every single ride or every other ride, it was a little bit of an issue. Another problem is e-bikes can possibly cause issues with trail access. And I got this from an IMBA email back in October of 2020, and I'll read you this paragraph so you can hear what I'm talking about. It says, if the Forest Service continues to classify e-bikes as motorized, these directives have the potential to reclassify non-motorized trails as motorized trails to allow EMTB access or e-mountain bike access. This could jeopardize trail funding and lead to increased user conflicts. So there's like political issues and other kind of trail access issues. I'm not going to really go into that subject anymore, but that can be an issue with e-bikes. Now, the last point that I want to make, because this is a pro and it's a con depending on how you look at it, and that is the environmental impact. On the pro side, an e-bike can allow more people to ride their bikes versus using a car, whether it's commuting or maybe someone who has an e-mountain bike is going to ride to the trails instead of driving to the trails. So that is a very positive environmental impact. Also, like I mentioned earlier, if normally you would use a shuttle to get to the top of the mountains, in other words, a vehicle, but instead you're using an e-mountain bike, that's another positive environmental impact. Now, the negative environmental impact is just the fact that there's a big battery and that's going to go in a landfill or be recycled or something like that, hopefully one day. So if you're driving to the trailhead, whether you have an e-bike or a traditional bike, the e-bike is going to have a negative environmental impact because of the battery. So again, environmentally, it's a pro or a con depending on how you use the e-bike or how you look at it. So that is my list of pros and cons of owning an e-bike. Again, it's not exhaustive. It's just the ones that I've come up with. So if you have any more that I didn't mention, go ahead and drop those below. I'm sure I missed a few. And like I said earlier, I tried to keep this as neutral as possible. I just wanted to list the facts as I've experienced over the last 3 months. Now, some of them were kind of just based on, who I am as a rider. There is a little bit of personal opinion mixed in there, but I think most of the ones that I listed are going to be fairly universal no matter what type of rider you are. So as always, questions or comments, drop those below. Thanks for watching.